Hello, welcome. The hour, we're a few minutes past the beginning of the meeting. We'll go ahead and call our Higher Education Subcommittee to order. Also welcome anyone from the Higher Education, as I call it, Policy Committee. Certainly they're welcome to join in for this committee hearing. I know we have members of the committee here as well as presenters both here in person with us and online. I want to welcome you. Also want to welcome other members of the General Assembly who may not be on the committee, but who are very interested in the topic of aviation and understand how important it is in our state. For a couple of years, I've been hearing information regarding, aviation in Georgia. Certainly, we all know how important aviation is in Georgia. Who doesn't know about Hartsfield International and Delta and the world's largest and busiest airport and all the commercial flights that come in and out, in addition to all of the carriers from our logistical perspective that come in and out. Many also understand some of the major businesses that are in aviation, such as probably one that I'm most proud of as far as probably the premier company in in the world as far as fixed wing, and that's Gulfstream. What a standard to set, in the aviation industry, to know that that's here in Georgia and that people from all over the globe actually come to Georgia, and that's where this premier aircraft is manufactured. But we have a lot of other aviation businesses, a lot of other aviation interest. It's not just the one or two that we think about, and that's what prompted me to start to look into aviation in Georgia. And there are several aspects of the industry. And our first presenter is going to talk about, those different sectors in general, but I started thinking about how are we going to prepare for the future here in Georgia as far as providing the qualified, workforce that is needed to continue to support probably one of the biggest industries in our state. And especially after I heard some demographics as far as retirements. Certainly COVID has, it's an awful thing. I know we've had early retirements in some of our bigger companies, especially as aviation has dropped off. But I would encourage this committee to also think about that from a perspective of, it's also a blip on the screen, if you will, because eventually we will return to normal. And I think our aviation industry will continue to grow. And I think it's going to be interesting as we look forward, and as the numbers of flights and the dependence back on aviation picks back up. Will Georgia be prepared to fill the need or fill the workforce need that's out there as we continue to grow our aviation industry? And I'll also remind you, we've also got Air Force bases. I know that Robins Air Force Base in Middle Georgia is one of the largest employers, I think, and I think Amy's going to talk about that. But a lot of Georgia is dependent. Our military bases are aviation dependent. So in a lot of ways, this is a very, very important industry. And so I want to begin a discussion today in general on aviation, but I also want to take that discussion down as we see a general overview, but let's look at what we need to workforce to make sure that we, as far as manufacturing these planes, keeping these planes maintained up in the air, the pilots, that sort of aspect. And I want to see how our institutions, our higher education institutions, are rising to meet those needs, and also more so, how are we going to address, I think, an onslaught of demand in this workforce as we come into the next couple of years. So with that, our first speaker will be Amy Hudnall, Amy, will you're welcome up here or anywhere. She's going to be our first presenter. Amy is the director for the Georgia Center of Innovation and Aerospace with the Department of Economic Development. So Amy, if you will, if there's anything else we need to know about you, will you please tell the committee, and we welcome you today and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. So I'll just say, I'm Amy Hudnall. I'm the Director of the Innovation for Aerospace for the Department of Economic Development. The Centers of Innovation are industry focused. I'm looking to see if we got slides. The Centers of Innovation are industry focused teams supporting companies in 6 strategic industries across the state. So I consider my job to be helping aerospace companies go farther, faster by connecting them to information, resources, potential teaming partners, and new technologies. Today, I've been asked to give a 30,000-foot overview of the industry. There we go. And to start today's discussion. And so in the Air Force, we would call this a fighter pass, right? So we're going to go very quickly through a lot of information. We're going to focus on the headlines, and you can look at all the details that are there as afterwards. So next slide, please. It's always a good idea to define your terms. And I use aerospace as an inclusive term to cover the full life cycle of activities for vehicles that fly in the air or space. So design, build, fly, operate, maintain, or modify. That's what we're doing here in Georgia. And these are some of the Georgia companies you can see in that space. Next slide, please. Georgia is at the heart of the Southeastern Aerospace Cluster. And we've been recognized by Site Selection Magazine 8 years in a row as the best state to do business. One of the reasons that it's great to do business in aerospace is that it's a very target-rich environment, both inside the state and just outside the state lines. Next slide, please. Georgia's aerospace industry has a $57.5 billion economic impact for the state. And our 800 aerospace companies employ over 108,000 Georgians. These are well-paying jobs. They are averaging about 77,000 based on, this was older data. That's 47% higher than the average wage in Georgia. This is from our 2019 economic impact study. We're getting ready to release a new one later in the spring. But just this week, the Trade Division announced that aerospace is once again the #1 export in the state at just under $10 billion. Despite what a lot of people think, it's not peaches, poultry, or peanuts. It's planes and parts. And they have been Georgia's top export since 2004. In large part due to our friends at Gulfstream. So this slide, next slide, please. This slide lets you see that a little up close and personal based on what that impact is for your region. We have 3 significant clusters in the state. About half the industry is based in the Atlanta metro area, then Macon, Warner Robins, and then the coast. Next slide, please. This is another way to look at it. You can see the various sectors. You can see where they're concentrated. Manufacturing, air transportation, and MRO, or maintenance, repair, and overhaul, are all roughly equal. Our other sectors are UAS and space. And then those support companies are things like engineering services companies who perhaps are not, fully focused on aerospace. Next slide, please. This is another great way to see it. You can see it broken out by the individual sector, and you can see some of the top companies in each sector. The great thing is that we have a mix of industry giants like Gulfstream, Lockheed, Delta. We've got a bunch of technology startups, so we're well positioned. Our portfolio is very diverse. Next slide. Yep. This is our headline news in one slide. So we're going to look at our top 3 sectors: air transportation, MRO, and manufacturing. We're in the top 3 nationally in all of these areas. Then we have UAS, which is rapidly changing. The Department of Economic Development has had a UAS working group for 9 years working towards commercialization of unmanned systems. That technology is changing so rapidly that now we're talking about, I don't know if you heard about United Airlines purchasing 200 new electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles last week. And they're looking at using those to bring people from outside the metro areas to the big airports. So this is our headline news. Like you said, we're going fast. So this is manufacturing. And Georgia was ranked #1 for aerospace manufacturing attractiveness by PricewaterhouseCoopers, in large part because of the density of content on this slide. We have key manufacturers like Gulfstream, Lockheed Martin, Maule, and Thrush, and they manufacture whole airplanes, but there are hundreds of companies providing parts and processes across the industry. Airbus, Boeing, and Delta all have manufacturing research centers at Georgia Tech. The global industry also benefits because our aerospace exports have increased 2.5 times over the last 10 years. Next slide. This is a quick look at some of the manufacturing subsectors, including aerostructures, engines, think companies like Pratt & Whitney, TECT, PCC Airfoils, and machine and metal for precision manufacturing and advanced coatings. Composites and interiors are important areas for commercial and business aviation markets. But we need to talk a little bit about COVID's impact on the manufacturing sector, and it's big. Airbus orders are down 65% from last year, and Boeing suffered its worst year ever, delivering only 157 airplanes and receiving cancellations for 600. This greatly affects the down supply chain and our aerospace manufacturing suppliers. Georgia has over 100 companies who supply to Airbus and 200 who supply to Boeing. And of course, some supply to both, increasing the impact. As we turn to air transportation, let's take a look at our hometown airline. At the beginning of the pandemic, next slide, please. At the beginning of the pandemic, 40,000 people took voluntary leaves of absence from Delta. In July, 17,000 people took early retirements or departure packages and left the company. Those people had an average of 25 years of experience. And together, it was over 400,000 years of experience that walked out the door. So you need to wrap your head around that. 400,000 years in one fell swoop. Shortly after that, 1,800 Delta pilots took early retirement. So that's going to create some difficulties in the workforce pipeline, whether it's because people aren't current because they're not getting enough flight time. They need to be trained because we're parking airplanes and we're bringing, and people will need to transition to new aircraft. So this is really a significant impact. You can see on the slide that in air transportation, we're still on the top line of the busiest airport in the world. Our traffic has decreased 56% this year. The good news is that we have 103 public airports. They have a direct economic impact of $7.7 billion, and they employ about 104,000 people. I want to make an accounting note here. When I talk about the aerospace workforce, I'm talking about people who design, build, operate, repair, or modify airplanes. They're doing something with an aircraft. This number looks at a much broader employment, and that's the people that work at the airport, the concessions, the rental cars, the hotels, all of that is rolled in. But it's still a very, very, it's very important to have those two numbers and understand how we got there. So One thing that isn't immediately visible to most of the general public is the large ecosystem that supports aviation. There's a lot of employment in things like aviation medicine, aviation lawyers. Georgia has the second largest aviation insurance sector in the United States. So these perhaps don't come to top of mind when you think about aviation, but it's a significant impact to the state. Next slide, please. And the employments and the cargo, those are current numbers. They're going to change a lot in this next year. So on the maintenance, repair, and overhaul part, this is where a large part of your revenue stream is. You build an airplane once, you're going to maintain it for 10, 20, 30 years. In the case of the Air Force, we have some we've maintained for 70 years. So that's where it's at. MRO is where it's at. So, excuse me, Delta Tech Ops is the largest MRO facility in North America. It's the third largest in the world. And we have 125 certified aeronautical repair stations around the state. And then these major MRO facilities at Delta, at Gulfstream, at Stambaugh. So Gulfstream always reminds me that, you know, we're in MRO as well. I laugh with Jay Neely that one time he wasn't, I had companies listed by the sectors and Gulfstream wasn't an MRO. And I said, I only had room for 12 companies. You know, you can't be everywhere. So Jay thought they should be there. So at Robbins, you have almost 7,000 people sustaining aircraft there. So largest industrial site in the state and a huge MRO facility. A key part of this industry is the skilled aviation maintenance technicians that are produced by USG and TCSG. We couldn't do this work without them. Next slide. When you think about space, the space market is about $350 billion. They think it's going to be $1 trillion by 2040. This is largely in the satellite sector. And these are some of the companies that we have in Georgia in the various subsectors, but small but growing. And as internet increases, broadband increases, consumer TV, those are all things that are related to the space industry. So, you know, Turner Broadcasting has a little chapter of satellite professionals in their offices. And one other thing about the space, even though we don't have a ton of companies, we have a lot of companies that do contract with NASA. So there's like Felfab makes uniforms, military uniforms, but they also produced a special project for NASA where they built a cover for one of the arms on the International Space Station. So small industry, but we're still doing a lot of business with NASA. Next slide, please. We're almost there. We talked a little bit about UAS, unmanned aerial systems, remotely piloted vehicles, autonomous vehicles, advanced air mobility. It's changing rapidly. We've been working in this area for, like I said, 9 years. Some of these lightweight drones are getting as ubiquitous as a cell phone for jobs. Georgia Southern uses them for their pipeline, you know, their electric lines, checking their electric lines. They're everywhere. Advanced air mobility is the next wave. And we talked, I mentioned the United Airlines gig. Atlanta is going to host the Association of Unmanned Vehicles International this summer. It's bringing together a lot of people. And Georgia Tech has a new research center, the Center for Urban and Regional Mobility, which is bringing together multidisciplinary research in this topic. So it's coming. So I've talked a lot about the broad aerospace ecosystem here in Georgia, and it wouldn't be possible without the technical colleges, the universities, and the private institutions that both create the skilled workforce and provide the technical support and research our companies need. I also want to stress that the aerospace industry requires hugely diverse skill sets, from interior designers creating Gulfstream's luxury interiors to the chemists that are working on alternative fuels. We need computer scientists. We need artificial intelligence experts as we do sense and avoid. And we need math and business majors to grow this industry. I keep track of the aviation education offerings that aerospace companies ask me for when they're looking at, where am I going to locate in Georgia? So I keep this handy as a sales tool. I'm going to leave it to my technical college and university system colleagues to correct and amend as we go forward. But I'm going to share this with you as a quick glance. Next slide, please. These are the technical colleges and the university that are providing aviation maintenance technician training. You can see it's color-coded by what they're offering and where they are in the state. This is a slide that I use in almost every presentation to an incoming company. Next slide. These are all of the post-secondary programs that are offered, everything from aircraft structures technician to air traffic control. Again, they're offered at the TCSGs, at the USG, and we have 2 commercial schools offering some of these programs. Next slide. And these are the bachelor degree and above. So you can see the comprehensive offerings at Middle Georgia State. Clayton State also offers a minor in aviation management. And Georgia Tech is the largest producer of aerospace engineers in the United States. We don't just use aerospace engineers in aerospace. We use, as I said, wildly divergent skill sets, but we use almost every engineering discipline. So this is always top of mind. I hope this has all been quick and dirty. Next slide. But I hope this gives you a deeper understanding of the very, very broad aerospace industry in Georgia and its strategic impact to the state. It's not just an important industry on its own, but you can think about it as an enabling technology for almost every other industry in the state. And it facilitates other industries and has a huge impact on the Georgia economy as a whole. And thank you, Chairman Knight, for the opportunity to share this.
Well, I want to thank you for presenting this. Just a couple of comments, and then I want this to be a good discussion with our committee, because I think what we see from this presentation is that this industry is much larger than I think I even thought about as we talked in a couple of days preceding this meeting. Very large economic impact on Georgia. And that's very interesting. And a couple of comments that I want you to maybe expand on, and I keep going back to, a couple of sectors. I know we've got our engineering that's coming out, helping with the new technology and designing and, that part of, aircraft. But I am struck though by your comments around COVID and around the fact that this has sort of paused the industry. But again, I want to maybe let's look at our crystal ball, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road, as hopefully this pandemic is behind us and we return to normal life and our industries return to normal life and we all start getting back on planes and traveling and all the business that goes along with it. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And your comments regarding the number of employees alone from Delta that retired early, that gives me pause because that's a great number. That wasn't in the hundreds. It was
about half.
Yes, it was in the thousands. And so what I foresee, and I want this community to start thinking about as our role here, especially with higher education, is let's just say some of those folks come back, but let's say half of them do not come back. What is that going to do for Georgia's economy within this industry as we're looking for the people who are building, supporting, maintaining, keeping all these aircraft going as the industry comes back? Any comments there that you foresee?
Well, you know, we slid by, but the Boeing outlook is the industry standard. And so the Boeing outlook says that for pilots and technicians, that although we're seeing a significant drop, you know, a 5% drop is what they counted from last year. They anticipate that we're going to need, it's 198,000 new pilots and 192,000 new technicians between now and 2039. So that's in North America. So just focused on North America. I think that we're never going to give up aviation. I think business travel, you know, per se, where you jump in an airplane and you go for a 2-hour meeting, I think that's going to change a little bit because we're going to do Zoom, you know, but I think we're going to see continued growth in the industry.
That's what I'm worried about is 2 and 3 and 4 years from now, as we start to see the uptick, how are we going to start making, you know, the employees that are needed to backfill, if you will, to prime the pump or the pipeline. That's what I want us to start focusing on and see how do we meet those needs. And that's a great concern. So members of the committee, questions. All right, Representative Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate very much your comments about aviation. And I was very proud to see that the technical college in my district, South Georgia Technical College, was providing all the services except for in doing the interior work. I can speak from personal experience as to the quality of the students that they're producing. And they work all over the country, all over the state, Gulfstream, Warner Robins, Delta and Atlanta, PDK. They're attracting those students and we're getting them in. So we are producing them. We need to refocus on that and bring that. But the caliber of the students that we're producing are great. And I applaud you in promoting this. And there is a question in these comments somewhere. So, but anyway, what I wanted to find out is, do you see with the drone technology that advancing so fast that it's going to pick up, because the skill sets are very similar? Do you see that picking up more, and where maybe personal travel has dropped because of Zoom, the drones will be adding more to that? What do you see there?
I think it's really interesting. There's several industry leaders. I don't know if you've seen, Lilium is one of the air taxi, if you will, companies that has announced a location in Orlando, Florida in the last month or so. And they're looking at, you know, what they need to build that out, whether, you know, it's where the vertiports are, because they can land like helicopters. It's electric vertical takeoff and landing. So there's advantages to sustainability. They can land a lot of places, but it's still going to take a lot, I think, to achieve the sense and avoid that's there. I thought it was fascinating that United made this bid for this Archer product that doesn't even have a prototype yet. So if you think about how long it took them to recertify the 737 MAX, right? A proven airplane, it took a couple of years. It's going to take a while to get these certified, but I definitely think that they're headed that way. There's a lot of, I can't help myself, there's a lot of buzz about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the past, to be a professional drone pilot, you had to have your private pilot's license. Do you see any changing in the regulations from the FAA?
So I would say, you know, now the certification that's required is a Part 107. But I'll tell you that like UPS, which is using drones to deliver medicines in Florida, to work on the medical campus in North Carolina, they're using commercial pilots to operate those drones. So I think that there's going to be there's either going to be a new certification or there's going to be a, you're going to be using commercial pilots
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
for people, for drones with people in them.
Good questions, Chairman Chokus, and quite frankly, I think there's a lot of new horizons out there from technology and how the unmanned will work. But one of the things I want us to focus in on today, and as we get through our speakers, is again our current situation, our current aircraft. We've got to keep both the fixed wing and rotary up and going. And as Amy had eloquently said, some of these vehicles are aircraft are flying, 30, 40, 50 years.
Mhm.
So that's where I want us to sort of hone in on where we are today, not necessarily the technology side of future of drones, but the pilots, the maintenance side of this. The folks that are fixing, manufacturing these aircraft. So with that, Amy, I really appreciate your presentation and thank you for what you have put before us, because I think it's vastly greater than what most of us probably realized out there as far as the aviation and aerospace industry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next presenter is a personal friend of mine. And as Amy had alluded to, there are other sectors that are out there. But in general, there's the overall arching issue is how do we improve and support the workforce? And our next presenter is Lance Tollen, founder of Lance Tollen. He again, I know him. He is involved in several different lines as far as industry, the insurance industry. But I know him as a friend and somebody who's very, very dedicated to the aviation industry. In fact, he was inducted into the Georgia Aviation Hall of Fame. And okay. I've got one. And before we introduce my friend, we've got one question from the committee. Chairman Perkle.
Thank you. I thought you'd already gone.
The technology.
Thank you so much. And there was a great presentation. I really learned a lot with that. And to the chairman's comments about what we'll do in order to maintain that leadership that we have in the state, I think it's as Chairman Chokus had mentioned, it's not a one size fits all. It's we need to work on this where the students are, and I know in Douglas, for instance, they're looking at strategic partnerships with the Career Academy and South Georgia State and Wiregrass Technical to do this mechanic school, because this is such a big need across the state. It's great jobs. It is the future, and we need to find ways. And I just want to thank the presenters for what you've done, and Chairman for your leadership on this.
I appreciate it, and you're right. It's important, no matter if it's in the metropolitan area or the coast or even in South Georgia. I know ag's a great part and utilizes aviation and what they do. So, but with that, I want to again welcome my friend Lance Tollen and let him address the group with some of his thoughts.
Okay, you ready for me there, David?
I am. Hey, Lance, how are you doing?
Very good. I'm speaking to you from my original office in Griffin, Georgia, just southeast of Atlanta. I came up from Sea Island.
Well, we're glad you can make it, Lance. I know, you and I spoke a lot and learned a lot about the industry. You and I have worked on some bills in the past to remember lien law and learning a lot then. And I'll tell the committee, from that point, I've opened my eyes as to how large aviation was in Georgia. And again, as Amy talked about, the different sectors from finance to insurance, which Lance was a part of, to lien law and how important that is. So Lance, with that, would you share some thoughts that you may have with the committee on aviation and what we need to do going forward to make sure we're doing the right things to support this industry?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for letting me speak here regarding the lien law. As a matter of fact, that we put together. I'm one of PNC Bank's aviation specialists, and that has had such great impact throughout the industry. Georgia really took a lead with coordinating lien law for possessory and non-possessory liens that can be filed with the Federal Aviation Administration on large Gulfstream type aircraft and the likes on down to smaller aircraft. But I'm again a native of Griffin. I grew up at the airport and have made a career in aviation. And I've influenced a lot of folks along the way in later years here. The prior presentation was great. In the insurance industry, for example, I think if you will actually include our numbers, if you will, in that sector, the aviation insurance industry, Atlanta is actually #1 in the world now. We insure more aircraft, do more aircraft insurance transactions than London. This is inside industry. So I would think that you could put another $2 billion in your budgetary numbers there, that things that are actually going on in the financial world, and not even to mention a lot of the financial institutions that are here that finance Gulfstreams, Bombardier, Dassault products in France and what have you. So again, like any overview of something, there's sometimes more that can be added. The numbers you mentioned are staggering with regards to pilots. I'm a airline transport rated pilot. I don't fly commercially anymore. I operate aircraft at my business all over the world. We could not get over $4 million worth of MRO work done on some of the aircraft that we operate at Standby Aviation recently. We had to go to Tucson, Arizona to have some Boeing equipment done in Tucson that we buy and lease to other companies around the world. Additionally, the technicians that we have to employ on that are highly specialized. With all due respect, the trade schools are turning out a good product, but that product is not the type of product that we use in our disciplines in operating large aircraft, including helicopters. If you look up there at this wooden propeller, that's off of a 1940 something propeller in an airplane that probably operated out of Griffin here when this was a B-24 training facility for maintenance personnel and also training pilots to go off to war, my father being one of them who wound up in the Navy in World War II. So we in Georgia and Griffin in particular have a rich history. But when you think about a part, this little part right here, came from Ace Hardware earlier, including tax, it was about 26 cents. That's to me, a trade school item. This bolt is an A&P bolt. It's A&N hardware. It has a lot of nomenclature on it, and it could fit this part on an aircraft. This is a fuel controller, a fuel pump for a general aviation type of aircraft, nothing fancy, but it's $2,800. It's not about the money here, but this similar part at an auto parts space is $27. This bolt has to be looked at and approved with layers upon layers of technical support, traceability. A wrench that goes on this bolt has to be certified. This bolt has to be torqued to 155 inch-pounds when it goes into a hole to lock this onto an engine of an aircraft. There are volumes. I hope you can see all this. There are volumes of things that have to go into that bolt going on. So you can see aviation is no longer a trade school discipline. Trade schools turn out a fantastic product, but what we find, and we're lacking in our industry, in the insurance industry, in the aviation support industry, the maintenance side and flying, is that it's taking a higher caliber individual to own and operate these aircraft in a safe manner, and industry has picked up on this. I personally funded at the University of West Georgia with then President Kyle Morero, who is now, I believe, at Georgia Southern. He said, Lance, what do we need here at West Georgia, your old school? Where, by the way, I learned to sweep the floors there to go to school at the Carrollton Airport. So my first management job was a broom. At the end of the day, Kyle and I bantered back and forth, and I said, Kyle, you know, what we need and what's lacking in our aerospace industry is we need technical readers and writers. He said, done, let's put a program together. And I have funded that. And that program's been ongoing for a number of years. At the Middle Georgia University, Christopher Blake and Aidan Clark have asked me to become involved down there, as well as chairman at the time, Tommy Hopkins, who I grew up with here in Griffin, Georgia. Tommy, many of you will know, is the chairman of the Board of Regents. And what we found at the technical, not the technical school, but the School of Aviation there in Eastman was a lack of accreditation. So I personally, again, stepped in and funded what's called an ABI accreditation, so that we are now recognized alongside of Embry-Riddle University, and Daytona Beach was a world-class facility. University of North Dakota, which basically writes the book on ABI accreditations for international accreditations of technicians and pilots and so forth. So what I see us having to do is step out here in the state of Georgia and being that measure that others measure against, just like Embry-Riddle and North Dakota. We need to be equal to or greater than those facilities. And the only way that we're going to do that is with more concentration of recognizing the industry that we are involved with here in the state, not only its economic impact, but its quality of life impact for those who choose this field of discipline and like myself, hitch their dreams to a star and move out of their comfort level into a very, very demanding and recognized discipline where you need a minimum of an associate's degree just to put a, you know, I mean, I hate to say a law school dropout. I never took the bar after attending law school, but it takes more than a technical school graduate to come in and deal with this as an accounting process. So you see, there's nothing wrong with our technical guys at all, but we have to push forward to a higher degree that we as at Georgia, we're number one in insurance now. We can't hire people fast enough. Our Q4 and Q1 of this year have been the biggest in our 40-year history in this agency located in Griffin, Georgia. So as you can see, the aviation aerospace industry is bustling, it's bursting at the seams. There's a vacuum and a need for disciplined, well-disciplined, well-educated technicians. Aerospace technology is where we're headed. And if you don't understand that, come visit me and I'll try to educate you even more. You're talking about drones. And back to the insurance industry. My firm, over the last year, we've been involved with a lot of military contracts all over the world with surveillance and military aircraft that are used on the civilian side that are leased out to the different specialists, if you will. We, through this agency, insure the largest drone in the world. How does someone from Griffin, Georgia pull this off? And we want more kids to pull it off and hitch their, their dreams to, I can do this, or I can become that specialist. But the largest drone in the world is insured out of Griffin, Georgia. If you remember, there was a company called Solar Impulse out of Switzerland. I have a lot of contacts, business contacts in Switzerland through aerospace and insurance. And I was chosen to put an insurance program together for this project. Solar Impulse, if you'll remember, was an electric vehicle that was built in Switzerland, the highest tech aircraft in the world, and flew around the world solely on electrical power. And we now insure that, and that platform is going to be used for low orbit or high altitude telemetry and data gathering in North Africa, providing broadband services. This is declassified. It's all open source if you want to look at Sky Dweller, and you can see about that. As an offshoot of that, we were contacted this morning. I'm typically up at 4 a.m. in the morning by a German firm who was we were referred to, who is going out with a new balloon platform to get out of the orbital high cost telemetry. So again, this is highly specialized. I am not a rocket scientist. I'm from Griffin, Georgia. My first management job was a broom sweeping the hangar floor. And as I've told you, I hate to use the pronoun I, where I did this and I did that for the University of West Georgia or our school in Eastman. I'm just trying to give back because there's so many opportunities. And I tell people, and I did in my closing statements at the, or comments at the Georgia Aviation Hall of Fame, which I'm very proud of, and I'm honored to be representing Georgia in that capacity, that a mile of runway, think about this, a mile of road will take you exactly 5,280 feet if you're driving. That same 5,280 feet in an aircraft will take you anywhere in the world. So you think about that. We need to take our aerospace industry to anywhere in the world. And I hope that you guys will support our efforts at the campus in Eastman. And there's so many opportunities out there. And I'll open myself up to any questioning.
First of all, Lance, thank you. I know you and I have spoken many times, about this industry. And I think, again, from what we saw from the first presentation and what you've gathered, that this industry is not only larger than we ever thought, or a lot of us ever thought, it continues to grow. And again, you got into the unmanned area, other technologies than just a traditional fixed or rotary wing aircraft. But I think as we go forward and some of the discussions that I know we've had broadly, we've got to make sure we're supporting our industry now, not only in the future as we prepare for technicians and the upcoming technologies that are emerging now. But I still continue to look at, the aircraft that we have in Georgia, that's being made in Georgia, that's being serviced in Georgia. And that's where I see a great need going forward. And you and I from Griffin, we all, a lot of us around the state may know, we've got areas similar to what in Griffin, but, we grew up, a lot of my friends' fathers were worked at the airport. They were the mechanics then. And now my contemporaries, their sons, a lot of them are still up there. But what I'm seeing is there are valuable high-tech jobs, high precision jobs that we know that we're not currently meeting the need. And then as we look past COVID, as the world returns and the demand for aircraft and the demand, the more use that we put on these existing aircraft, we need people there. And again, I think that's the point you're making. This is very precise. These are the difference in the bolt that you just showed. This is something that is precision. It's tracked. The FAA tracks it. And Lance, you know more than probably anyone, but the FAA requires life cycle. You've got to have overhauls, inspections of different parts of aircraft. And that's why our aviation industry is so safe. I don't know if you can speak to that as far as, what's tying in the importance there, and why is it safer to go get in an aircraft than it is to get in your car?
Well, exactly. And David, a lot of the kids that I grew up with, you're right, their parents worked in aviation or at the airport in Atlanta. Although I lost my parents at an early age, my aunt and uncle who raised me here in Griffin worked in the cotton mills. We don't have cotton mills in Griffin anymore. They're gone, folks. That industry is, that ship sailed. Let's make aviation our next industry that carries Georgia into the future. But again, this little bolt here from Ace Hardware, if you would put it on an airplane, you'd crash. If you put this bolt on an airplane, that bolt's been X-rayed. As a matter of fact, many of you might remember Davy Allison. Davy Allison was killed. He was a race car driver. He was killed in Talladega, I believe it was, at a race, landing at a race. I'm a helicopter pilot myself. We operate helicopters all over the world and leasing them and what have you. And but there was a bolt that failed on Davy Allison's helicopter, and that's what was determined. A friend of mine, Jim Thompson, a plaintiff's attorney in Birmingham, asked me to be a expert witness on that, and we found that bolt had been x-rayed, but there was a flaw and the inspector missed it. And that's what killed Davy Allison. Folks, we're not dealing with fuel pumps and like the gentleman from the trade school there, putting interiors in an airplane. That's automotive trade, and that's a great job. It's a great trade. We're talking about folks' lives, many lives at any given time. And this industry, whether it's in the new composite arena, which is very important, and we have a great composite facility here at Griffin that does aerospace composites. As a matter of fact, I'm going to point back to that propeller there, 1940s technology. It'll still work. It'll still fly a Piper Cub aircraft. One of the aircraft that we use in our business here, we just put a composite propeller on it. That was maybe $1,000 and whatever year. How about $130,000? And the amount of paperwork and the testing, we actually did the testing for this German company, MT Propellers, on this new composite propeller. So we're engaged in a lot of different disciplines, and it's all about safety. So you're exactly right. Let's make Georgia that #1. Let's be that gold standard that Gulfstream's brought and graced our state with. Let's continue it in all aspects of aerospace specialization, not just the turning of wrenches like an automotive shop and an interior shop.
Well, Lance, thank you. I'm going to open up. I don't know if there's any questions from the committee today. If there are, yeah, we've got one. Representative Mathiak from Griffin, Lance.
No, we have the Griffin delegation here today. Thank you, Lance, for being here. I guess my question is, do you think our technical school is a jumping off place or a starting place for our students to go to a higher education facility, so to speak? Do you think we're preparing those students?
Karen, I don't, and let me tell you why. I've thought about this. I've had deep thought about it. When I was charged a number of years ago to help look at the school in Eastman, I had 2 recommendations at that time for the committee I was on. We need to shut it down because we've already spent all this money on it and we're not producing what I call a world-class product. Or we should go ahead and put money into it and make it a world-class facility. That decision was made to make a world-class facility through the Regent system. These kids, in order to get the real good jobs, if you will, they have to have that college background. They have to know how to read and write. So to answer your question, no, I think the technical school in aviation is exposure. I mean, you can go up and take the airframe and power plant test. There's a school called King Schools. You'll buy their program for $2,000 and you read their program 3 times and you've got about a 70% chance of passing that test. That's not what we need. We need education. We need hands-on. We need technical experience. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, I'm thinking, Mr. Chair, can I have a follow-up question?
You may.
Okay. I was thinking math skills, especially when you showed the difference in those 2 bolts. I thought, ooh, the math skills have got to be higher, I would think. Am I right?
I would say yes, the math skills have to be higher. If you look at a mechanic now, he's got to be part lawyer, he's got to be part CPA, and he has to be part accountant and math major. It is that difficult to keep your tracking I mean, I've got guys that work for me. Actually, I have two people. I was fortunate here. Rob Purefoy here is an Embry-Riddle graduate and also a United States Marine Corps maintenance officer and a crew chief when he was in the military. So I'm so fortunate to have him. But when I dispatch him somewhere in the world, all of those disciplines come in. He's not a pilot. He knows how that airplane, to get off that airplane safely. It's not myself and two other rental pilots up front. It's paper. Paper's making that airplane flying a lot of money. And his wife also is a former maintenance officer in the Navy that we've employed. They're both veterans, and we're proud of our veterans, and we give them preference. But, you know, we need highly skilled individuals. And, you know, again, trade schools are great. They're trades, they're skill sets. We need an educated workforce coming out and to represent Georgia in this industry.
I think I was looking for help for the student to be able to frankly develop those skill sets and to excel in them, because I want to fly in a safe airplane. I don't want to fly in that 26-cent Bolt. I want the other Bolt.
Well,
Exactly.
I think, yeah, and I think we are, Karen, I think that's what this discussion is about, is to start looking at this industry. And, you know, we do have, there are some Faa certified programs with it, even with our technical colleges, but that's what we want to do today, is we want to look at what we have here in Georgia under our higher education system. And let's look at where we're going. Let's look at what we have, start to a conversation to start evaluating these programs and how are we going to meet the future needs that we're hearing. And the perspective that Lance gives is one that I think opens our eyes from a point of view of a policy that, you know, the certifications, the requirements from the federal government, FAA, in regards to the highest and most precise standards that our aviation industry has to operate under. You know, it's tough, and that's why we do feel safe. So,
David, if I could make one more comment, there are several schools around the state that are not affiliated with any of the state institutions that are, you know, hired guns, if you will. There's a aviation school or two in the Atlanta area, and what they do is they sign these kids up and adults, trying to get them to sign on to their curriculum at, you know, at a price. And by the time you come out the other end, you're obligated to $60,000 or $80,000 that they have financed, and you've sold your soul to the devil. And I would love to see these things out of our state. And I'd like to see these kids that want this, let's give them a pathway with online learning, which is possible, and hands-on learning at these facilities. But we have a world-class facility in Eastman, and I'm proud to be part of that. I have no official title there. I have no board chairing or seating, but I can tell you from where it almost got shut down to where it is today, it is a world-class facility. And thank you, Chris Blake and Aiden Clark for making that happen, and that staff down there. They are world-class.
well, Lance, I think you're a great segment into where we're going next. We got one more corporate citizen Gulfstream, actually, but I think the point is, and then when we start to talk about I want this committee to begin to think about and also talk about, we're going to hear from our technical college system and our university system about that very item that Lance just talked about. You know, what is it that we can do to provide an education that is affordable, okay, but has the highest quality and standards, so that we're producing the students, not only for this important industry and workforce that we're seeing out there that is in need, but we're giving that opportunity to Georgia citizens and other citizens coming here to experience it and have that opportunity at an affordable price. So Lance, I think that's a great segue. Thank you for what you've done with the industry. Thank you for your perspective that you have shared with us. I know from a safety perspective, insurance perspective, and a love of aviation. I don't know if I know anyone in Georgia that's any more passionate than you about this industry. So thank you for what you've done and what you've contributed. And we're going to continue. Stay tuned as the conversation continues to see what we need to do in Georgia to move forward.
Well, thank you. Still proud to be a Georgian, and I haven't moved to Florida like most of my colleagues who have made money to avoid taxes. So think about that, guys.
Uh-oh. All right. Well, we may need to get you Ways and Means.
Need them in Griffin too. We don't need them leaving Griffin.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lance. With that, we've got one more, and again, I keep bragging on one of our corporate, and there's many corporate citizens. And again, I apologize for probably not getting the word out about this meeting because there are a lot of industries in Georgia that I think we can brag on. The one that I know personally, and I want to introduce is Gulfstream. I know everyone probably knows about it, and certainly what they've done for Georgia, and especially our coast. And I believe we have Casey Jenkins, their Director of Service Center Operations. Is he with us today? Or she?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry.
Yep.
Casey, I don't know if I've met you. I'm sorry. She. My apologies.
That's okay.
Well, Casey, welcome, and if you'll tell a little bit about yourself and what you're doing with Gulfstream, and tell us a little more about Gulfstream, and if you could contribute to our conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I first want to say thank you for all the kind words about Gulfstream, Lance, and you yourself, and Amy as well. So thank you guys for that. So good afternoon, Chairman Knight, Vice Chairman Gaines, and committee members. My name is Casey Jenkins. I'm Director of Service Center Operations in Savannah, part of that MRO facility, Amy, that Jay mentioned to you not long ago. So we're just going to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about our commitment to workforce development and supporting public education institutions in Georgia. Can everybody see the screen, the slides?
Was that next? You wanted next frame, next slide?
I just want to make sure you can see it. Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. All right, so most of you probably know we've been in Savannah since 1967, proud to be headquartered here. We've got about 10,000 employees here in Georgia and then 14,000 worldwide. All of our R&D takes place here in Savannah. We've got a specialized campus, a full campus of just R&D programs where we employ nearly 1,500 engineers from multiple engineering disciplines, which we consider the best in the industry to support our R&D for Gulfstream aircraft. Our average annual salary for our employees is about $75,000 a year. Go to the next slide. All right, so manufacturing all of our Gulfstream models, which you can see here, our G500, G600, G650, and G650ER, and now our new flagship, the G700, is done here in Savannah. We've got state-of-the-art, highly technical manufacturing facilities, a lot of automation, and the best tooling in the industry to keep these aircraft top-notch. So we're the home to the largest purpose-built business aviation service center, which is where I'm sitting right now today. Many of our 3,000 Gulfstream aircraft come into service here in Savannah and Brunswick. The large majority of our fleet that come here to Georgia for their service work. So we're proud to be Georgia's largest manufacturer, and we appreciate the work that the legislature has done to make Georgia a great place to do business and make it fun to do business with you. One slide. Okay. So we're going to highlight a little bit of our educational partnerships, a few of them with several of our universities. So University System of Georgia, the Technical College System of Georgia, and some local school districts. We're very proud of our partnerships to help build that future workforce that we heard Lance talk about just a moment ago. So it's important to note, Gulfstream is very proud of our two big pipelines of talent, our veterans and Georgia hires, so local talent. Gulfstream values our partnerships with USG and TCSG to ensure Georgians are well qualified and skilled for jobs at Gulfstream. As far as the University System of Georgia, we partner with Georgia Southern, Georgia Tech, Middle Georgia State University, and the University of Georgia. The growing demand for engineers is really strong. We appreciate those programs, those schools growing those programs and providing more access to students so that they can take classes to gain those degrees. Gulfstream's proud to support the institutions. We provide financial philanthropic support. Gulfstream senior leaders, we have several that serve on advisory committees. We also host Gulfstream leaders and hiring managers on campus. So they host us on campus for tours, and we do the same. And then we also host students here at Gulfstream for tours to just learn more about what we can offer and what programs we're investing in most. A large number of the co-op and intern program participants at Gulfstream every year are enrolled in the Georgia institutions. In fact, Georgia Southern University has the largest percentage of co-ops and interns at Gulfstream. And I myself am a product of that co-op program. I started at Gulfstream 20 years ago as a co-op and still here today. So I'd say the programs are even better than they were when I started. So our education outreach and those students play a major role in participating and contributing to the success of Gulfstream. With the School of Aviation at Middle Georgia, I'd like to spend a moment highlighting the work they're doing and how they're feeding some of our workforce needs. Also, we want to acknowledge and publicly commend the University System of Georgia, President Blake and Dean Clark, for their leadership and support of Gulfstream. Middle Georgia State University, their aviation program plays a critical role in educating and training the workforce as well. And then graduates from the programs at Middle Georgia State, we really feel that they enter our workforce and join our teams with the technical experience that they need. And they've also, some of the harder things to learn, the social and collaborative and power skills needed to work through the computer systems and excel in our environment. So Gulfstream's especially focused on a couple of programs we'd like to highlight. Aviation Structural Technology Certificate, the Aviation Maintenance Technician Airframe and Power Plant Certificate. The A&P programs are very, very valuable for us and an area that we continue to try to grow and support with local schools. The Aircraft Structural Technology, which is an Applied Associate Certificate, and then the Aviation Maintenance Technology, also an Applied Associate Certificate. And Aviation Science and Management is a flight and management program that's actually a Bachelor of Science program. So these certificates and degree programs, they align with the current and future workforce needs that Gulfstream has. And the Middle Georgia State University, they do a great job of partnering with industry professionals like us and others to ensure that we're offering, or that they're meeting the needs of the industry and partnering with us. Technical College of Georgia is another great asset that's educating and training students for us in our field. Coastal Pines Technical College, part of the technical program, is planning to expand their aviation programs to meet our growing Brunswick facility. So we've got about 200 employees currently, but there's going to be an additional 60 jobs added in 2021, really focusing on our special missions program growth. So we're fortunate to have Savannah Technical College here in Savannah in our community as a key partner. They're right around the corner, adjacent to our campus, which makes it very easy for our employees to continue their education and continue to grow their skills, and also a good pipeline of people that we can help develop and grow from that school as well. We commend Dr. Kathy Love and Dean Tal Luce, their leadership and their efforts to partner with us. They truly are, they do recognize the partnership, and we really appreciate that relationship. So for Savannah Technical College, the School of Aviation, there's a couple of key programs we're focused in on, more of, in the trade, in the trade arena and the A&P area. So aircraft assembly technician in more of a sheet metal capacity, the aircraft upholstery and trim certificate, focused really on our interior of our aircraft, and going along with the interior as well is the luxury aircraft cabinet making certificate, and then the A&P path, so the airframe certificate or the airframe and power plant certificate, or either or both. And then the aviation maintenance technician, both airframe and power plant. So avionics as well, so installer and technician from a troubleshooting perspective. We can't find enough of them these days, it seems. Avionics is an area we're really trying to grow our bench strength and develop for the changing demands of the aircraft. So a lot of programs, there's a lot of support that Gulfstream is offering those programs. We actually donated a retired Gulfstream aircraft to support the training of the aviation students at Savannah Technical College. So very proud of that. All right. We've also formed a three-way partnership with the Chatham County Public Schools, so Savannah Technical College, Gulfstream, and Chatham County Schools, to create aviation and manufacturing service programs. We launched that in the fall of last year at Grove High School, local to Savannah, or local to Gulfstream, just 10 miles up the road. So we want to thank Dr. Ann Levitt, the superintendent of Savannah Chatham County Schools, and Dr. Kathy Love, again, of Savannah Technical College, for their leadership and support of the program. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to partner and create what we're doing there at Grove. The program's really unique. It brings the industry together with a K-9 or K through 12 education partner, along with a higher education partner to, expose those students to careers in aviation and advanced manufacturing, and really help give them a path to start in high school and then continue on into the aviation field. So that we feel like this is a perfect fit for us at Gulfstream. We also know that the Savannah Chatham County Public Schools, they're currently constructing a new Groves High School, and a part of that new facility will be included an aviation lab. So our programs will be taught there. So we're very excited about helping them develop that curriculum. Savannah Technical College, they really continue to provide a strong workforce for us with their aviation programs, not just from like I said earlier, an A&P airframe and power plant perspective, but also in the trades that support the interior of our aircraft as well. Students in the program, they're spending their freshman and sophomore years of high school taking 4 aviation courses that are taught there by their public school instructors. And then during their junior and senior year, the students will enroll in Savannah Technical College through dual enrollment, and they can complete 4 to 5 Savannah Technical College certificates in structures and avionics to really, set the groundwork for after graduation. So because of the dual enrollment component of the program, students are able to complete certificates with little to no cost to them. And also when transportation is an issue, it really helps them have that, accessible there at school where they're already attending. The certificates that they're taking, or the certificates that they're obtaining, will make them eligible for full-time direct hire positions when they graduate high school, so here at Gulfstream. They'll be eligible for careers assembling aircraft, installing, repairing avionics equipment. There's a lot that they can do by just starting in that program, and then getting the hands-on training here at Gulfstream. So we have very proud to have a very strong mentor and training program with our existing team members. So there's really a program, none like that, and we're proud to have the partnership with our local school districts. It definitely helps get us exposed to great students, and then also great students exposed to the aviation industry and honestly high-paying careers that we can offer here at Gulfstream. We also have, I'm getting close to wrapping up. You can see in the center picture a young man there looking out one of the windows. The Gulfstream partners with the Savannah Chatham County Schools and Effingham Schools and Bryan County Schools and Glenn County Schools, so all of our local or surrounding counties, to offer work-based learning for youth apprenticeship positions. So those youth apprentices, while in high school, can participate at our Savannah or work at our Savannah or Brunswick facility. My sister was a part of the youth apprenticeship program, so I'm a big supporter of that program as well. So on average, we have nearly 80 high school apprentice students working at Gulfstream throughout the year at various times in various roles. So that can range from, you know, apprenticeship as a technician on the floor building our aircraft, in the tool crib supplying tools, in our paint facility helping the paint team and learning how to do that type of work, in the upholstery area. So just a wide range of opportunities for those students to work, to include office positions too. So I don't want to discredit that part of our business as well. So finance, materials, supply chain, customer support, that type of thing. So in addition to getting a high school credit through work-based learning, they also work. They get paid at Gulfstream to do their job, and they also get to apply and go through an interview process, just like our full-time positions do, to get practice to help prepare them when the time comes for them to look at full-time opportunities. So in that program, another thing we're very proud of, and it comes from the culture really that we've built here at Gulfstream. Our managers supervise closely the youth apprenticeship students. They're providing them mentoring and guidance and really helping to develop their skills to get them ready for aviation and other STEM type careers. So in closing, I just want to say what I've shown you today is just a snapshot of our programs and opportunities, and just Gulfstream offers to expose and educate and train our future workforce. We're fortunate to have dedicated public education systems at the K-12 level, as well as our post-secondary level educators in the University System of Georgia and Technical College System of Georgia to work with us and partner to build programs and build people for the future of aviation. So together, industry and aviation work together to make sure that Georgia, as Lance alluded to, Georgia will remain and continue to grow as the #1 place to do business for aviation. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm happy to take any questions if there are.
Casey, thank you for your presentation, and certainly for all of what you do at Gulfstream and helping make this a premier, the premier, probably one of the premier aviation companies in the world. Specifically back to, there were a couple of comments that I think I heard you allude to through your presentation, but again, as we look forward, this committee looks forward in years to come to try to help you meet these workforce needs. You had talked about that Gulfstream over the last couple of years, this was the largest purpose-built facility, aircraft facility in the world. I mean, globally. And, can you speak just, briefly to the demand of the number of educated, skilled workforce, people that you need to help keep that facility, how much it grew, but also, as you look to the future, what do we need to be producing? I mean, what are we looking at as far as, number of students, the type of students, whether it's in, areas that are upholstery, but also in some of our, the FAA certified areas, as you work on the power frame, the structural stuff. Give us a little sense of what what you're seeing there, and what do you expect from, or could hope to expect from Georgia and our higher education, colleges and our technical schools to produce for you? What, if you could write it, what would you want to see in the future produced from Georgia education, higher education?
So we're honestly, where we're struggling the most to find talent is in the trades area, and I think Lance alluded to it. The talent for sheet metal, it kind of feels like it's a dying trade, a dying art. But we've got over 3,000 aircraft out there that need service every day and need that expertise and skill. So sheet metal, avionics, both installation familiarity with wires and also systems and how they integrate and how to test and troubleshoot those. But also, as you alluded to, the trades of upholstery and veneer, woodworking, building furniture, composites. So it's not that difficult to find people in the area of accounting and people that have, logistics understanding. It's really that technical, hands-on technician pipeline that we're trying to continue to grow. We employ close to half of our workforce here in Savannah, so just right at 5,000 technicians hands-on our aircraft. So that pipeline of talent, we need to continue fostering and growing. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, we appreciate what you've done and, your presentation today. And as we start this conversation, looking forward to, what we can do from a policy point of view of directing our resources to make sure we're meeting the needs of not only Gulfstream, but our many other aviation companies and partners in Georgia. We want to continue this dialogue. And again, thank you for what your presentation today. And thank you to Gulfstream for what you do for Georgia. If there's any questions of Casey, any questions from the committee? Well, Casey, thank you again for your presentation. And we may, as we get into this, we may revisit and ask you some more questions that may help us guide our actions in the future.
Sure, happy to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. With that, I wanted to do a sort of an overview of industry and, looking at it from a point of view of Georgia's economy, sort of the needs. We've heard from some people within the industry. So what I want to do now is I want to hear from our technical colleges and our university system, colleges that are in this area, and let's start talking about what we're doing and getting an idea of what is it we're doing now. Are we doing it the best we can? Are we making the wisest use of resources? What do we need? What do we not need? And how do we focus our attention going forward? And I think this, will hopefully drive some bigger discussions as we look to future years to make sure that we're making sure our higher education institutions are meeting these needs. So with that, I'm going to invite, I think the commissioner. Let's see, where's my agenda? Commissioner Dozier and TCSG Raymond Perrin to come up and talk about the technical college system and the aviation programs within our technical college system.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here virtually.
Oh, hey, Commissioner.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm all right.
Good. And like so many today, I just want to kick it off and I'll have Ray kind of go through some of our data for you. But I do appreciate today's opportunity to present. Aviation is such a beloved area, one that we all want to make sure that Georgia stays, as that Price Waterhouse survey showed the #1 place for aviation. And obviously, we have a big heart for that in our technical college system. As you'll see from Dr. Perrin's presentation, we have the colleges that are focused in those areas. And obviously, with the workforce shortage, we want to be part of that solution in the future. So if appropriate, I would hand it off to Dr. Perrin. He's going to talk about an array of different levels of certificates. I think one of the things that I would like to add from the earlier presentations is you'll see today that we do offer all the way from the technical certificate to a stackable credential of certificates, all the way to that associate's degree. So our students that are coming through, whether it's through aviation or other areas, they're coming through with a lot of the different levels of education that we've talked about today. And we're so proud of our students and those partnerships with Gulfstream that we believe we're providing a true value to the system. But we also know there's a shortage in the system, and we look forward to partnering in the future and growing this area. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, I would turn it over to Dr. Perrin to present our PowerPoint today.
Thank you, Commissioner Dozier. And I think you all have our PowerPoint, and I don't know if it's loaded there in the committee room. Yeah, there it is. Great. Well, first of all, I am Ray Perrin, Deputy Commissioner for Technical Education with the Technical College System of Georgia. And I just want to thank you all for this time, and thank you for including the Technical College System in this important discussion regarding aviation programs. And on behalf of our 22 colleges, our college presidents, our 140,000 students, and literally hundreds of thousands of graduates from our technical colleges, we want to thank you for the support that you give us in allowing us to do the work that we do. Pardon me just a moment. Next slide, please. I want to start out talking about the two types of aviation programs that we provide within the Technical College System of Georgia. They're the FAA regulated programs and non-FAA regulated aviation programs. Currently, 5 of our technical colleges teach the FAA regulated aviation programs leading to the airframe and power plant certificates. Augusta Technical College, their campus in Thompson is where that program is located. Central Georgia Technical College in Warner Robins. Georgia Northwestern Technical College, they operate a facility at the Floyd County Airport to teach this program. Savannah Technical College, they're out there near Gulfstream at the Crossroads campus of Savannah Tech. And then finally, South Georgia Technical College at their historic runway airport facility there in Americus. And next slide, please. We have 2 other colleges that are in the planning stages for providing FAA regulated programs. Atlanta Technical College is in the process of having the airframe program approved. If everything goes according to plan, pending FAA approval, we will start teaching the airframe program there this fall. Chattahoochee Technical College is also planning an FAA regulated program. This is pending the funding and the construction of a facility in Paulding County, about 15 miles northwest of Dallas. So again, 5 colleges currently have the program. 2 are in the planning stages of bringing on the FAA regulated programs. Next slide, please. The FAA regulated programs, there's basically, we deliver them through a number of formats. You can see on your screen here, we have what we call a technical certificate of credit. This program is a 79 credit hour program. It takes 5 semesters, which is almost 2 years. Our students go year round, so they go fall, spring, and summer semesters. So this TCC, Technical Certificate of Credit, is a 5-semester program. It includes coursework in the airframe and the power plant areas. At the completion of this program, the students are eligible to sit for the FAA licensure certification test in both power plant and airframe. The next program is a diploma level program, which is essentially the same as the Technical Certificate of Credit. However, we do add some general education program courses to that program. It's a 6-semester program. Again, upon graduation, the students are eligible to sit for the certification exam for power plant and airframe. And then finally, we have an Associate of Applied Science degree program, which takes the coursework from the power plant and airframe programs and adds college level general education courses, making these students eligible for an Associate of Applied Science degree. So these are the 3 basic programs. We also have 2 additional FAA approved programs. If I could go to the next slide, please. These are also technical certificates of credit. However, they focus specifically on either the power plant certificate or the airframe certificate. So instead of doing both power plant and airframe, we have just a handful of students who, for whatever reason, selected just do one of those certificate programs. So again, all the coursework that's in the power plant program of this TCC is also included in the 3 programs I showed you earlier. The same is true for the airframe certificate program as well. So those are the FAA approved programs. These programs are highly regulated. We comply with a very, very strict regimen that's prescribed by the FAA. The FAA does unannounced visits to each of these campuses on a very regular basis, usually every 2 or 3 months. You know, we talked about the difference in the Ace Hardware boat and the engineered boat. Well, these students are engineered graduates when they go through this. Every part of their program is highly prescribed. Every part of it is recorded. Our instructors keep meticulous records of all the instruction that these students have undergone. They keep meticulous records on the skills that these students have achieved during the course of this program. These students take 9 tests, and they must pass those tests in order to continue to progress in the program. So again, these graduates from these technical college programs are highly skilled, highly competent, and again, those that choose to sit for the FAA exam have a very high pass rate on this. So we're very, very proud of the quality of the students that these technical colleges produce from these programs. Next slide, please. We also have a number of aviation-related programs that are not regulated by the FAA. And again, these are taught at 5 of our institutions, Atlanta Tech, Augusta, Central Georgia, Savannah, and South Georgia. And these run a gamut of programs. You know, our representative from Gulfstream talked about the structural programs and the aircraft assembly, the avionics programs. These are all included in these non-FAA regulated programs. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. And again, these next 2 or 3 slides just show you the breadth of these programs that are not regulated by the FAA. And again, these are also fairly detailed programs. These students are highly skilled upon graduation. And I would like to say that these students, as with every graduate of our technical colleges, we guarantee our graduates, we guarantee our students can do the job in which they trained to do. So again, you can see these programs: avionics maintenance, avionics bench technician, avionics installer. Next slide, please. Avionics technician, the 2 aircraft assembly technician programs. Next slide, please. Aircraft structural maintenance, aircraft structural technology programs that we offer. And as the Gulfstream representative shared with us, many of these programs are also offered in the high schools, particularly at Savannah Tech, as part of dual enrollment programs. So these students, while they're in high school, are learning these highly sought after skills to make them have the groundwork for a great career. Next slide, please. And again, composites is an area that many of our colleges are working with. Only one of them has a composites program that's designated specifically for aircraft, but we do have a number of colleges across the state that do have composites labs. And also at Savannah Tech, as has already been mentioned, we have the aircraft upholstery and trim and the luxury craft cabinet making certificates of credit that are taught at Savannah Tech. So again, these are the non-FAA regulated programs that we provide instruction in. Next slide, please. In terms of our students, our enrollment, I've got 3 slides here to just kind of show you the number of students we have. In the FAA regulated programs, we've grown from 366 students in academic year 2018 to over 400 students in the year that just ended. So in AY 2020, we had an 8% growth over AY 2019. So more and more students are entering these programs. We could take more students into these programs if we had the capacity to do so. In fact, some of our colleges have waiting lists to get into these programs. Next slide, please. In terms of the non-FAA regulated programs, you can see that there are actually more students in these than are in the A&P programs. And you can see these are the fastest growing programs within our aviation programs. In AY 20, we had a 35% growth rate in enrollment in these non-FAA regulated programs from AY 2019. So again, more and more students are entering these programs, and our hope is to continue to grow these programs across the state, because aviation is such an important part of our state's economy. Next slide, please. And again, this is the total number of students enrolled in all of our aviation programs. So you can see last year we were just under 1,000 students enrolled in all of our aviation programs across the state. And the enrollment continues to grow. Last year, we had a 22% growth rate in enrollment over the previous year. So again, the programs continue to grow, and we look forward to opportunities to continue to grow these programs across the state. Next slide, please. Our mission is workforce development, and one of the ways we measure the effectiveness of our mission is the number of graduates that we produce and the placement of these students into jobs. And again, you can see from this slide, we've broken down the graduates in the last 3 years from our FAA regulated programs, the graduates from our non-FAA regulated programs, and also the total number of graduates from these programs. And the reason you see total unduplicated graduates is in many cases students take the FAA programs. They also may take a certificate in a non-FAA program. So the total you see here is the total number of unduplicated graduates. Overall placement from these programs is about 99% in-field placement, which means these graduates are working specifically in the field in which they prepared. For the last year we have that data was over 85%. And the reason the AY 20 says pending, we don't finalize that data for a year after those students graduate. So it'll be September of 21 before AY 2020 placement data is confirmed. So you can see we're graduating students and they're going to work. So we're very, very proud of that. And as I mentioned earlier, we guarantee our graduates. Next slide, please. This is the top 10 employers of our graduates in FY 2019. And I just want to mention that Gulfstream is number 11. We listed the top 10. Gulfstream is number 11. All of these organizations employ our graduates. They also help support our programs. I mentioned Atlanta Tech is in the process of getting their airframe program approved by the FAA. Delta Airlines has worked very hard with Atlanta Tech. They've actually dedicated a group of people to work with Atlanta Tech to develop the curriculum, to be sure that the equipment needs are in place when this program starts in the fall. Savannah Tech has just wonderful support from many of their partners, including Gulfstream. All of their business partners in Savannah Tech over the last 8 years have donated almost $750,000 worth of in-kind donations or scholarships or support directly for programs. So we're just very, very appreciative of the strong support that our technical colleges get from those who hire our graduates. Next slide, please. Much of the information that we would share with you from the technical college system has already been shared with you by the Georgia Department of Economic Development and Gulfstream. And we're very, very proud to partner with Gulfstream, the Georgia Department of Economic Development, and all of the many people who hire our graduates. And we're excited about this program. We look forward to continuing to grow our aviation-related programs across the state. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Perrin. I do, and I think this is where the committee really needs to get into, what our institutions are doing, and then, start figuring out where do we go from here. Obviously, as you've alluded to in your presentation, and we saw from the Department of Economic Development, the future is almost daunting in a way of the sense of what we're up against as we try to fill what we think are the projected demands out of the aviation industry, particularly in, I think, manufacturing, maintenance, flight, the things that, again, are outside of maybe the engineering on the back end and some of the emerging technologies that have been alluded to. We got to keep what we got up in the air. Would that be a correct statement? And that's sort of where I want to focus on. But there are a couple of questions that I would like to go back through, and I don't, and I may get our folks to put back the slide as we get to some of these questions, but specifically on your presentation. But the first thing I want to ask is we get into, what is the cost per student from start to finish, and as we start to look at this, how does it, how are those costs differing from the program to program as it relates to, to the industry? We know that all classes aren't created equal. All, I guess, certified programs aren't created equal, but what are the costs of some of these, on a per student basis, if you can, and maybe break those out from, FAA. I know we got the FAA certified programs and the non-FAA certified programs.
Well, the average cost to operate these programs is about $400 a credit hour, and the shortest certificate program, which is a 90-hour program, at $400 credit hour, that's about $36,000 a student that it takes from the time they start to the time they complete. And it's a 2-year process that these students are with us. The total revenue that the colleges received last year in tuition from these programs is about $366,000. So again, it is a very expensive program to operate, a very expensive program to maintain. I was speaking with the president at Georgia Northwestern Technical College earlier this week, and just calibrating the equipment on her campus, the trainers that they use, is about $150,000 a year. So again, these are expensive programs to operate. But the graduates, the average starting salary for these A&P certified technicians is about $60,000 a year. So again, it's good money and for these graduates. And the other thing I would like to add is, because of Georgia's HOPE program, many of these students also qualify for Pell and other financial aid. I would say 95% or greater of these students graduate with zero debt. They're not carrying the $60,000 debt that they would be by going to one of the trade schools. Choosing to come to a technical college, they're able to get a high quality education at a very, very affordable cost that leads them to great careers in a high demand area.
And that may lead me into another question, which is, you talk about, and I want the committee to understand, these are much different than just a book class that we may think of in a traditional setting.
That's right.
When you get into these programs, certainly these certified programs, this is a hands-on. You're actually working on aircraft or parts, engines, or fuselages. Whatever. I'm not an expert, but I know that you're hands-on. But what is the buy-in? I mean, from industry, and how much of these costs are fronted, by industry versus, the state?
Industry is very supportive of these programs. As I mentioned, in Savannah alone, over the last few years, $750,000 they've contributed to the program through in-kind donations and scholarship funds for our students. In fact, the Savannah Tech program itself was started as an initiative from Gulfstream. The reason it exists is because Gulfstream felt like a program was needed in Savannah. Same is true for the program at Georgia Northwestern in Rome. Phoenix Air works very closely with Georgia Northwestern to help support it. Delta has been hands-on, again, as I mentioned, has a dedicated team of people working directly with Atlanta Tech to develop the curriculum to start that program again. Thrush Aviation is a huge partner for South Georgia Tech's program. And of course, Thrush Aviation is more of an agricultural aviation type of industry, but of course that's what's needed in South Georgia, crop dusters and so forth there. So Thrush Aviation is a big supporter. There's several supporters of the program at Central Georgia Technical College, including Robins Air Force Base and other partners work to support these programs. So yes, we couldn't do these programs without the financial support and the in-kind gifts that we get from these industry partners.
That may be some good data as we go forward for the committee, and certainly may request that from college, and I'm the same questions going out to the USG, but where are our industry partners in this, and what are the in-kind contributions that are going into to help support these very expensive programs? Again, well worth it, high-paying jobs to support a big industry. So with that, let me ask you a couple of things, because I'm one of the things that I think we went over is, and that we talked about, and we're talking about a large future demand, or well, I think the demand's here now, but I think as we look forward to the future, large demand of these students, these qualified students coming out into the workforce. You'd mentioned about capacity. So I know TSG has several of our technical colleges have these programs. So, and maybe we'll talk about these programs in two ways as you described them, the FAA certified programs and the non-FAA certified programs. So starting with the FAA certified programs, what are our technical colleges that are providing those programs, and where are our capacity there? Are we full, or some of the, I know is every college at full capacity, or do we have some that are not at full capacity?
These colleges are operating at capacity. In some cases, Georgia Northwestern comes to mind. They're running 3 cohorts at a time. The cohort size is regulated by the FAA, as is everything else about these programs. The cohorts are 24 students. There's 1 instructor per 12 students teaching in these programs. So it's not only the classroom size, it's also the ability to have the equipment to rotate these students through as they go through the cohorts. As you mentioned, Chairman Knight, it's a very hands-on program. The students are working directly with engines and aircraft components. But before they even put their hands on engines, they work with trainers so they can get an understanding of the concepts behind how these engines work and how flight happens. So they work with expensive trainers before they get their hands on the aircraft. So part of the capacity issues is classroom space, others is lab space, and others is staying within the confines of the regulations set by the Federal Aviation Administration. One of our colleges has a 2-year waiting list. If you applied today, you wouldn't get in until fall of 2023.
Okay. Well, and I think that speaks to demand, and we may want to look at some more of those numbers as we look geographically across the state. Obviously, this is an industry that is not concentrated necessarily in one area, but that's sort of where I want to look at and see where our concentrations are, where all our colleges and what programs, both non-FAA and FAA certified programs are. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is really graduation rates. And a lot of times, we say, hey, we've got this many students enrolled, or we've got, certain completion goals, or however we define that, but also placement. So I'm hearing in your testimony that you've got, and I don't have the slide in front of me, but a placement rate that was very high, 80%, 90%. So I want to talk about that, because I've had, and certainly prior to Commissioner Dozier's predecessor, we had talked a little bit about this, and we had heard some things that, a lot of other industries are going in and picking off these students as they complete these FAA certified programs, because they are so rigorous and very, 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 precision, technically, precise. So let's talk about that, because again, if we've got this large number, this demand that's just staring us in the face by thousands, I'm talking about the thousands, but we're graduating, or I'm hearing, 20 students in a cohort or whatever it is, are all 20 going into the industry, or some of the conversations I've had in the past is, half of them aren't making it because they're getting picked off before they get to the industry.
It varies from what part of the state that the program's in. For example, in Savannah Tech, 20 out of those 24 graduates are sitting for the FAA test, and they're going to work in the field. Georgia Northwestern, on the other hand, those graduates are getting picked off. They're about 50% of those students go to work in the aviation field. Others go to work in related fields where they're using those skill sets that they learned in the program. So again, that's going to vary from region to region in the state.
Okay, because I think that's an important part. I mean, and again, as we look at the technical colleges, if we've got other industries that are wanting what we're sort of teaching here, in this aviation, these programs, is there another way to, one, get the industries that are sort of picking them off, again, as they get their certificate and walk out the door? Do we need to go to those partners? Because certainly, these are, expensive degrees, or, programs to put on. I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because again, if we've got this large demand, and it looks like, again, your slide, what slide number was that, Dr. Perrin?
The overall placement rate in 2019 was 85%. Excuse
Yeah.
me, the infield placement rate was 85%, and the overall placement was about 99%.
So again, I want to make sure that we're looking at this from a point of view, are we actually getting this in this industry that we're talking about, or do we have some folks on the side? And again, great industry, great place to do business in Georgia, but some of these hydraulics and applied, mechanical engine or assembly, I'm hearing a bunch of things from different areas. I know down our Southwest corridor, there was some mention a couple of years by Chairman Nix about those areas, and so I'd like for us to get some more information, and if you don't mind, our budget, our analyst to get with you, and let's get into that, because if we need to look at some of the other high demand areas, other industries that are coming in, and we need to look at programs for them, I'd like to do that. Let's bring them in to help sharing the load, sharing the cost of this versus, piggybacking off, if you will, the aviation industry. I hope that's not too forward, but I think that's, we'll never meet the demand at this rate. And certainly if we're losing these students as they come out the door to other industries, it's not helping.
Okay, but again, I will say that's regional. In some areas of the state, the overwhelming majority of these students are going to work in field, but certainly understand what you're saying, and we'll be happy to work with the analyst to.
I just think if we're going to prioritize our resources at the state level towards aviation, we want to make sure we're at the end we're producing those students to go into the aviation field. So I think that would be a great way. And then in regards to programs and stuff, I don't understand all the certificates, but I
Understood.
want to, we're not double counting folks from a point of view of certificates and, the number of enrollees, so that at the end, we don't look like we've got more folks that are actually getting, certifications or degrees or diplomas than we realize. So can you explain that to make sure we're not necessarily double counting folks?
In fact, we went through this data today, but preparing for this presentation to be sure we were not double counting. So on slide 14, when you see total unduplicated graduates, that's unduplicated graduates from the aviation programs. Some of those graduates do get more than one award. So out of that 403 unduplicated graduates, we may have given 550 certificates, for example, but only 403 individuals graduated from an aviation program last year. And that is not a duplicated number. That's a solid number.
Yeah. The other thing is I know as we're going forward, we're trying to look at and build upon, our resources at the technical college level to provide more of these courses, especially the certified programs from the FAA. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about, how the program. I understand it's about a 2-year time frame to start to finish to get that FAA certification. Very rigorous process. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in fact, if you're starting with a new facility, such as Paulding, for example, from the time that you say, hey, I want an FAA program, you're probably looking at 4.5 or 5 years before the program starts. It's going to take a couple of years to construct the facility. Then, the 18 months to 2 years to get the FAA approval to operate those programs.
So I know we put some funding in. I think we're looking at that, but I don't know if you mind sharing whatever your plan is for Paulding County as we go forward to look at that. What are your plans, and a brief maybe comment to the committee on what does Paulding County look like as we go forward as far as offerings and courses? What do y'all see?
Well, for sure, the A&P certification programs would be there. We're also looking at a number of avionics programs that would be on that campus as well. We haven't completely built out all the curriculum programming, but for sure those avionics programs and the FAA certified programs would be at the Paulding campus.
Okay. All right. One more thing, and I would be remiss at this, but I understand, you brought up Atlanta Tech and, and their effort to get a FAA approved certified program. But I do want to mention that, it seems if they have had that program and back in 14, or I think it was 14, the FAA withdrew their certificate for that certified program at Atlanta Tech. So I'm sort of curious about that. And I've heard for a number of years of trying to get that program back up and going, but it's now it's going on 6 years. So I don't know if you could elaborate there on that and what happened.
Well, again, I wasn't here 6 years ago, so I don't know that I can give a lot of details on that. I can tell you that the President, Dr. Victoria Sills and her team are working very closely with the FAA to get that program up and running. They've had several visits this month, in fact, from the FAA regarding their airframe curriculum, and they're on track to getting that approved, the airframe portion of it approved, hopefully by sometime in May, which would allow us to start a fall semester class in airframe. And then there also would be working immediately after that on the power plant. And since many of the courses in the power plant certificate are also in the airframe certificate, they believe that we can get approval for that program sometime in FY22 or calendar year 22. So again, Atlanta Tech is working very closely with the FAA. As I mentioned already, Delta Airlines has a committed team of people working with Atlanta Tech and the FAA to bring this program back to that campus.
Okay. Well, I appreciate hearing that. I know with Atlanta and certainly with Hartsfield, not only Delta, but our other carriers and
Right.
folks that fly into the world's busiest airport, that's probably that's a pretty important issue in regards to making sure we've got a workforce there. But we will probably talk offline about what happened, because I'm curious about that, and how do we get to the point where we had these programs and then we lost them. So we'll probably have some further discussion offline with that. I'm trying to think of some other, there was one or two other questions, and I want to make sure the committee. All right. Chairman Chokus, we've got Chairman Chokus has got a question for you, Dr.
Yeah.
Freeman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you elaborate a little bit on power plant, turbine engine, reciprocal engine, on what the technical colleges produce in those areas? Because as I was looking at Gulfstream's presentation, I mean, those are jet engines, and they need to be maintained. The same thing with Delta. And like some comments on your part about what we do with maintaining the engines and the training that is needed for that.
Okay. Specifically, we follow the FAA prescribed curriculum on power plant. And again, they're very, very prescriptive on what we do with those engines. These students are actually getting their hands in these engines, working with them to get an understanding of how a jet engine works versus how a prop-based engine works. So we follow 100% the FAA prescribed curriculum on teaching power plant. And again, I know I'm probably not getting to the heart of your question, but the only thing I know is to tell you that we are following the FAA prescribed curriculum on that. So.
Any other members of the committee? One other question I'd like to know, and this is, as we work with the industry, and I haven't had a lot of time to, again, we just put this together last week as far as starting the discussion here, but as you look out and you're working with the industry, certainly let's take Hartsfield and certainly Delta, what are they looking at? I mean, what would be the perfect graduate that we could hand them from either the technical college system or the USG? What would be the perfect graduate? In other words, are we looking at that demand and tailoring our curriculum and our programs to meet that demand?
I believe that we are tailoring our programs to meet that demand. Some of the certificate programs that Savannah Tech has started, for example, and has come about directly due to requests they've received from the aviation industry in Savannah. The structural technology certificates, they've started the aircraft assembly certificates, they've started even the upholstery certificates that they started, all came directly from industry to be sure we were meeting their demand. In terms of a perfect graduate, I think that's kind of hard to say what is a perfect graduate, because it depends on what the job is that the employer is looking for. For example, our Gulfstream representative talked about, they need accountants, they need computer program. I mean, there's a wide variety of people that all these manufacturers hire. So the thing that we want to be sure that we're graduating someone who understands the industry, they understand the nature of aircraft, of flight, and that not only do they learn the skills necessary to get the job, but they've got the ability to learn new skills as they keep the job. I think that it's important for any employer to hire someone that not only knows their work when they start, but they've got the ability to learn the business as the industry evolves. And that's the kind of graduate we want to produce, is one that understands how to think, how to move forward as the industry moves forward.
Okay. One last question. This is sort of personal, but are we looking at other areas of the state? I know, obviously our history in Griffin and all is one that is tied to the largest busiest airport in the world. But there are other areas. We got bases all over and all. Are there any thoughts as to future programs? Certainly we went up to Paulding. I know we've got some businesses up there. I'm not as familiar with all of them, but any future thoughts on need and demand? Where do you see in the state the most demand?
Sure. There's a couple of ways I want to answer that question. First of all, some communities are reaching out to us, demonstrating interest. For example, Coastal Pines, they're talking in the early stages about what will it take to get a program started there. A community group in Douglas, led by Don Brooks, who's a good friend, they're wanting to start an aviation school at the airport in Douglas as well. So there's some parts of the state where the communities are coming forward saying, hey, we really would like to do aviation in our communities. We also are taking a strategic look across our state to see where the demand is. And certainly, with Hartsfield, Atlanta International being the busiest airport in the world, certainly we know that we've got to do more to support the workforce development in that area. So we would certainly be looking in the South metro area, Southwest metro area, potentially for new programs there as well. And certainly there are other parts of the state where there's considerable military presence, such as Valdosta with Moody Air Force Base. It may be that we need to take a look to see if there's a need for a program of this nature in deep South Georgia, Southwest Georgia. So we do want, and we are in the process of taking a strategic look across the state to help support the aviation industry. And I would say that we're doing this with a number of our industries. We want to be sure that we're supporting manufacturing and where that's concentrated in the state. So we want to be sure that we've got the resources in place to ensure that Georgia's workforce is there. So we'll continue to be the best place in the country in which to do business.
Well, Dr. Perrin, I appreciate it. And again, we may have some questions as we get into start to analyze this and put together, some thoughts as we go forward for the technical colleges and USG to hopefully meet these demands. And again, I do want to follow up on a conversation with you later, but I'm interested in those other industries that are wanting these FA students and how can we get those companies or industries to the table and develop a program for them so that we're not cannibalizing, if you will, our FAA certified programs.
We'd be happy to.
Dr. Perrin, I appreciate your presentation today and sitting for questions. And again, if you will, we want to continue this conversation. So we'll probably be in touch in the near future.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And our next presentation, the last one that we've got is also it's the university system, and we're going to invite President Blake from Middle Georgia State University. I know that they primarily from a USG perspective is sort of in this space and from the USG perspective, and give us a little bit of what your program is doing. And then again, I want to start looking at some of these questions. In other words, making sure that we're applying resources and cost, and how do we meet the future demand of industry here in Georgia? How do we keep these aircraft? We make them. How do we service them, keep them in the air safely, and what do you do? So with that, Dr. Blake, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the committee for your time this afternoon and for this invitation to speak on behalf of the School of Aviation at Middle Georgia State University. My name is Chris Blake. I serve as the president of the university. I do have my colleague, the dean of the school, Mr. Aidan Clark here. So with your permission later, if there are questions, I sometimes say as president, I know only enough to be dangerous about these things. I would defer to his more detailed knowledge. There are two documents that I shall speak to this afternoon. One is a handout that I hope has been made available. And much of the short presentation I have refers to that. It's a summary, a two-page summary of the work, the scope, and the accomplishments of the School of Aviation. But one piece on that handout that isn't in the few slides that I have is really the range of academic programs. I noticed that the conversation, even from earlier from Lance Tollen and more recently from the TCSG, has been about the kind of skill set and the competencies. And I can certainly come to that question, but here is a description on this flyer of the range of academic programs we have from the certificate level, in which there is certainly some symmetry, parallel with, say, the technical college, but through the associates, the baccalaureate, and now even the graduate fields in aviation. So as Georgia's only four-year public aviation school, it's important that our mission speaks to that full range of degree potential in the 21st century, with very much the bachelor's degree being the main driver in our School of Aviation. So I hope that that two-page or back-to-back handout will be of some help. Middle Georgia State University, as the name obviously suggests, is located in Middle Georgia, and it is regional. Although we did hear earlier that Eastman, you heard the word world-class facility at Eastman. We're very proud of our Eastman hub. And in the last 7 years, we have been able, through the support of the state and through private philanthropy, to enroll more students and to graduate more students with that as our main campus. It has a residential facility there, and we also have 350 students residing in our Cochrane campus, and we have a shuttle for them to come down. So the Eastman campus is our School of Aviation. It is also the third busiest airport in the state of Georgia. Much of that traffic is our students, but it is a fine facility and is a public airport that has a control tower and has a lot of planes coming in and out. With that, if I may move on to the second slide, please. We see, and you've heard some of this afternoon, that there are various focal points to aviation emerging in the Georgia-based industry. And you see that in maintenance, in flight, and in air traffic control. And we call those our three pillars. In short, that we have expertise and graduation and industry relevance in those fields, and they are all FAA approved. And in that sense, if I may move on to the next slide, please. What this means is that MGA, or Middle Georgia, as we call ourselves, is actually, we're one of 9 in this respect. We're only one of 9 institutions around the country that has FAA approval in all those 3 areas. And that is a very real asset. We're also able to do it at being at the most affordable rate. Now we're also, and it's not on this slide, but we are also a sort of 1 in 10 as well, in that we are accredited by Delta Airlines in their Propel program, which provides employment for those students in our flight program who elect to join the Propel program at Delta, be admitted to it. They then work with us, and upon graduation, they are guaranteed employment as pilots. Immediately upon graduation, they will fly in regional jets as what I think is called the first officer. That again, that's where I probably have the wrong nomenclature, but it means that they will be flying from Hartsfield straight from their bachelor's degree at Middle Georgia. And the other piece about this is that our degrees are also possible. You don't have to be a pilot. You could go into airport management. So if your dream was to one day be the CEO of Hartsfield, this is again a pathway that we provide at the university to do so. And you'll see that, in this, we're looking to get the international reputation, and last year we're given accreditation at the international level from ABI. So we are now recognized as a state provider, the only four-year public one, as a national provider in terms of the Delta Propel program and the Faa certification, and now internationally recognized in terms of our accreditation. May I have the next slide, please? We recognize that higher education has come through a period in which the American public understands that approximately $2 trillion worth of student debt is currently held by citizens of the United States. $2 trillion in college debt. We like to think we are part of the solution, not the problem of college debt. And we provide the most affordable way in which a future pilot or a future maintenance technician or air traffic controller can graduate with the FAA certificates and with the hope of the Hope Scholarship and the Zell Miller Scholarship at minimum debt, So you will see that our tuition and fees for 4 years are at an extraordinary price of $21,000. Our flight costs there are the average. You can actually get the flight cost for $58,000, but that's the average because students elect different flight hours, flight times, flight repetitions in order to get those hours. But long story short, the graduation cost of a degree at Middle Georgia in, say, flight is an affordability which we think benchmarks extraordinarily well, both here in the southeast of the United States, but also across the country. May I have the next slide, please? We've also worked to recognize that the United States provides an opportunity of access to education. And we are an access institution. We're a university with what the Board of Regents calls a blended function, meaning that we are obliged to be able to make sure that we're affordable, we're accessible, and that we help in the mobilization of groups in order to get careers and move on. So we're proud that we've worked towards diversity in the School of Aviation. We have 14% of our student body is female. That is over double the rate of the industry. And so clearly, in our view, we hope that the industry will continue in this way and that we will continue to also be leaders in terms of assisting in terms of diversity. And if you see this nationally, women make up 22% of air traffic controllers, only 5% of aircraft maintenance, and 6% of pilots. And we're very proud that we just raised from a retiring United Airlines, not Delta, United Airlines chief pilot has given us a scholarship for women in aviation. And when I went to his wedding in California, I was surprised and honored that all the guests were asked to make a contribution to that scholarship at the wedding itself. So it was I thought I was work and play in the best of way. Can I have the next slide, please? In all, we have 38% of our enrollment in the School of Aviation is people of color. And again, we believe that this is an important aspect of where the industry and the business will want to head in the years ahead, and that we will have graduates with the right values. We're asked about what is an educated graduate in this field. Well, it's certainly technical skills, and it's certainly a profound understanding of the integration of knowledge, but it's also the values, the understanding, the commitment towards seeing a business and an industry thrive. In short, to have certain leadership qualities that we expect from our graduates. So we're proud that we can do this. Let's move on, please. I would like to extend a thank you to the state of Georgia and to the General Assembly. In the past 7 years, we have been able to obtain primarily through bond funding, nearly $17 million in funds, which has gone towards the obtaining of equipment. Those are primarily planes, and we have to typically renew those on about a 3-year life. They have a certain point at which you need the fleet updated. So for example, in the last year's appropriation of $5 million, that would in fact get us 6 replacement planes and 3 new ones. So there is a sense in which this is a recurrent theme, which I have discussed with the Board of Regents and the Chancellor, is that aviation needs some sort of pipeline of funding over the years. It's not just a one time you buy the plane and then 10 years later you think, oh, maybe we need to renew that. There's a cycle that's quicker than that. And you'll see that you have stepped forward. And I also want to say, as president of the university, my job is also to bring private dollars. I wish I could have bought that much in the last 7 years, but we have recently had a nearly $1 million gift for planes to be based at our Macon campus. We do have a Macon downtown airport campus as an auxiliary to Eastman. And so we've been using private philanthropy to fund that as well. May I have the next slide, please? We're proud that we have been able in the last 5 years to grow considerably. The metric, actually, the one that I tend to use more often when I speak at a Rotary, is in 7 years, we have 300% grown. When I arrived at Middle Georgia, we had slightly over 300 students in the School of Aviation. Actually enrolled today, we have over 1,100, and with the fall numbers that have already been admitted, it's over 1,300. So there is a very large demand. Since the pandemic, we have been asked, has there been a drop-off of interest? And no, there has not. There has not. And of course, one of the realities is that for several years, the airlines have been saying that there is a huge workforce shortage. So the contraction of the industry has not actually at this point led to that shortage being eliminated. There's still going to be the need for pilots in the coming years. We've seen some areas where the interest has lapsed slightly, but primarily our enrollment continues to go up. We do have a border waiver arrangement with, I think, all but South Carolina, so that the students who come from those states will come to Middle Georgia and pay Georgia's resident tuition and fees. I would suggest that is definitely advantageous because the vast majority of those graduates are going to stay in Georgia, in the Georgia economy, so that we know that over 80% of our students, our graduates in aviation, are working within 100 miles of the Macon campus, and that obviously includes Atlanta Hartsfield. In the last 5 years, we've graduated 650 credentials. I want to point out the bachelor's degree will this year be at about 600 total, if we look at the current rates of those who will be graduating this year. And so in terms of the dispositions of a graduate that we are looking for, I said earlier that there is and I think Lance Tollen was alluding to this, that aviation has become a complex, intellectual as well as practical, highly competent, values-driven business. And it needs mind as well as practical skills. It needs analysis as well as manual, and it needs the kind of way of understanding a discipline that a baccalaureate degree and a 4-year degree speaks to. And so we're very proud of what we have been tasked to do by the Board of Regents. We are, as I said earlier, although you will find aviation-related degrees in other institutions, we're the only 4-year school that has this school defined and identified as being the way to deliver the flight program, the maintenance program, the air traffic control program, and the management program, and all of those being FAA approved. So may I have the final slide, please? The Department of Labor anticipates a continued need for increased employment in this field. Every year at the moment, even in this pandemic year, there is nearly 2,500 additional positions added in to the aviation industry in Georgia. So we aim to be a supplier of that. and to make sure that our School of Aviation will continue to grow at the current rates of growth. It will be the largest school in 2 years' time, which may cause some envy amongst my colleagues, other deans, but for us means that we certainly are very proud of the accomplishments that they are being able to accomplish in the School of Aviation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my presentation. Happy to answer questions. And with your permission, sir, could I also ask the Dean might be available to answer those as well?
Absolutely. I think as we get into some of these, and I understand what you're saying as far as the different programs, he may have a little more detail than
Absolutely.
yeah. So, in fact, Aiden, would do me a favor, President Blake, would you let Aiden introduce himself and tell
certainly will.
who he is and a little bit about his background, which I found
Well, thank you, Mr.
intriguing.
Chairman.
You stay up here. Don't
No,
get me
sure.
wrong, but just so the committee knows and all those who are joining us virtually would know. So Aiden, introduce yourself, what you do with the with the college, and then maybe your background a little bit. I thought that was very, very intriguing, your history.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for having us here today. I'm Aiden Clark. I'm the Dean of the School of Aviation at Middle Georgia State University. I am originally from Georgia, Osceola, Georgia. I grew up in the aviation industry. I've been in it my whole life. Spent 10 years in the Air Force, worked commercial and corporate aviation, agricultural aviation. Been at the university now actually we started as part of the technical college system. Been there total through all the transitions when we transitioned to USG for about 18 years now. So,
well, I appreciate it. I think again, some of these questions and we went through it with the technical college, but as we move forward, some of these questions I want us to get into, and again, you may get calls from our budget analyst to start, getting into detail, but again, with the immense demand that we're seeing, let's make sure we're using our resources right, efficiently, and how we best meet this demand head on. So again, I think you went on, our Dr. Blake, you had talked about cost. So I see in the slide, we may need a little clarification because I know you guys do, also pilot training, some of the other things that TSG, I don't think it has a pilot program, but Middle Georgia tuition and fees on your handouts, $21,280 a year, right? And then I guess if you're in the flight program, that's the additional cost. Is that, that's 4 years.
4 years, 21,000 is 4 years.
It's 4 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And so that's tuition and fees, but what about cost? So let's talk about cost per student and what it's doing there. I know we'd heard from TSG, I think roughly $400 per credit hour. What do we have? And again, you may have to break that down to make sure we're comparing apples and apples, apples to apples and all. But do you have any of that kind of data?
I don't have the cost per credit hour for, you talking about for the flight students or the maintenance students?
Well, maybe both. I mean, because you're doing all of what you're doing.
Mr. Chairman, the current credit hour of Middle Georgia State is actually closer to that of State College or on the State University, and that is something that I continue to discuss with the Board of Regents. The 21,000 that you saw breaks down to about $5,000 per year, and it comes out of a credit hour cost of $113.69 per credit hour. That is the same for an aviation student as it is for any student doing a bachelor's degree at Middle Georgia State. That is a standard per credit sticker price cost, which is why Hope and Zell for many students means that is virtually covered. So that is the same educational cost for an aviation student as it would be for a liberal arts student or a biology student or any of the other schools. The additional costs for flight, the expenses of going up, of us having to maintain a fleet, that is in that second column that was on that slide, which, the average over 4 years, I'm going to use the average at Middle State for that is $68,000 over 4 years. So somewhere in the region of slightly over $15,000 a year. It can be less than that. As I said earlier, the dean has a model whereby they can get their FAA hours in for 58,000 over 4 years, but students have schedules and options, and there are different times. So there's not an exact way in which that can be predicted in advance. And I would also say that currently that figure does not actually meet our costs of maintaining that fleet, which is something that causes our chief business officer who's sitting at the back, causes her some consternation. So in other words, the university is subsidizing these costs. But the total degree for 4 years, sticker price before there's any scholarships, any hope, any Zell, any academic scholarships, there's the bare maximum price for a student is at Middle Georgia, $89,000 for 4 years.
Okay. But that's student cost.
That includes
Yeah,
tuition,
but-
fees, and flight
But what I'm
costs.
getting at, Dr. Blake, is, and was we talked about, what is it costing the school per credit hour? That's, as we look to our resources that we're putting into our higher education system, and, what are we getting? The resources, where are they going? How are they being used? That's sort of where I want us to go as certainly as a higher ed appropriations, to make sure we're getting our most bang for our buck.
Right.
And using our resources as wisely as we can, because I know, Aiden, you and I had a visit, and I know you're, I call frugal. I am too, but that will be helpful as we go forward, because I think that's a discussion we need to put into a bigger policy discussion is where are our resources, and what is it costing to meet these demands? And obviously you guys have, more programs, but, as far as the maintenance, and then additionally, our flight schools, the air traffic, I think there was the 3 pillars that you were talking about.
Right.
And if you will, let's get some numbers. And again, I'm probably going to have our budget analyst call and talk about this.
Yeah, I can gather those numbers for you. Dr. Perrin is right. It costs more per credit hour to offer these programs. Our programs are a little different because we have the flight program, which is exponentially more expensive to operate than the maintenance program, albeit the maintenance program is an expensive program to operate just because of the equipment and consumables that you have to have and all the FAA regulations that go with it. So,
And I think that's, again, what I want the committee to hear in this discussion is this is a hands-on. And that's part of this education process, is to understand that, these students are, if it's maintenance, they're working on fuselages, they're working on the electronics, navigation, they're working on engines. So you've got to have this kind of, not only the tools and equipment, but the actual engines themselves, or fuselages. And so that's sort of where, I want us also as an educational point to understand these costs more. So as we start to look at these programs, we need to differentiate between, maybe a traditional college program, books, versus, again, it's different, and it does cost more. So let's talk about capacity, and as same questions that I asked the TSG, what are we looking at as far as, capacity? Are y'all at capacity?
yes, sir. We're actually above capacity in flight and maintenance, and we have a waiting list to get into both programs.
Okay. Could you tell me that capacity and what your waiting list is?
So for the capacity on the maintenance side of the house, it's based on number of faculty. So for every 25 students, you have to have 1 instructor.
Okay.
So 1 instructor for every 25 students on the maintenance side of the house. So you're limited on the number, you're limited your total number based on the faculty that you have. We're also straining the resources of our facility at this point in time. We're maxed out in our facility, both hangar space wise and classroom space wise for the AMT program. Same on the flight side of the house. So on the flight side of the house, it's really, our capacity is based on number of aircraft that we have and the number of faculty that we have. We have more flexibility on the flight side of the house with number of students that a faculty member can teach in a ground school or an academic course, but on the flight instructor side of the house, it's about one instructor for every 7 students on the flight side of the house.
I'm sorry, we got real quick, Chairman Chokus has got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in so many disciplines that we've been hearing in the Higher Education Committee, how difficult is it for y'all to find instructors, both on the maintenance and on the flight side of the house?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to, so part of the issue is, and you know, when you talk about the salaries that these professionals make in industry, it's hard for an educational institution, whether it's TCSG or USG, to compete with those salaries. I mean, we just can't compete at that level. So it's hard to get those folks, you know, to come back home. You know, if there's a tie to the community, you might get some of them, but it's very difficult.
Gotcha.
Probably our number one problem.
Gotcha. Follow up, sir. Okay, great. Did I hear you correctly? You said you were from Ocilla originally?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, how good a pilot is Senator Tyler Harper?
What's that?
How good a pilot is Senator?
He's pretty good. He's pretty good.
good.
He's actually done some flight training and helicopter training at our school, but he's been flying for a while. I trust him.
Thank you.
Going back to some of our conversation, and again, I'm looking at specific data, and help me understand. And this may be, you know, I know we talked to TSG. You know, they're talking about, you know, an expansion in Paulding. You know, meeting some of those needs there. Obviously, you know, what from your perspective, you know, you've talked about some of the capacities. You know, how can you, if you had more resources, you know, as we look to expand and meet these needs, where would it be, and what kind of turnout, in other words, return could we get, say, you know, students, and how could we increase the capacity of the USG, you know, programs to increase capacity to meet, you know, our future demands?
On the aviation side of the house, I mean, we're pretty reactive to industry needs. We have a pretty good pulse. We're constantly in conversations with Delta Airlines, with Gulfstream, and the needs that they have. As far as the School of Aviation goes, you know, our plan, we have a planned expansion for Eastman that, you know, that we've submitted to the USG, and moving forward, that's our goal, is to grow Eastman to make it a larger world-class training facility. Because if you haven't been there, and I invite all members of this committee, anytime they want to come down, to just let us know, and we'll host that tour. But it's a world-class training facility. But as I mentioned, it's meeting the, you know, we're kind of exceeding the limits there. The problem with it is when you start expanding outside, it's pretty expensive. You got a lot of overhead. So we'd really like to grow Eastman, and then we look strategically at locations throughout the state. And there's a lot of, you know, pros and cons to different locations. And I don't want to speak specific locations, but, you know, on the flight training side of the house, we look at congested airspace. So if you can get outside, if you're talking like Atlanta expansion, you know, flying out of Fulton County, or, you know, even Noonan, Coweta, there, you start getting kind of that Atlanta saturated.
Are you saying that a student pilot would be a little intimidated landing next to the big jets?
Just a little bit, yes, sir.
I think that's your point. I think that's your.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just intercede. From the university's perspective, I fully support, and the Chancellor has reviewed and discussed with me our plan that we indeed see for Middle Georgia State a greater Atlanta presence in our new strategic plan. As the Dean has said, we need to make sure that Eastman continues to be supported and flourish, but it is very clear that the greater Atlanta area has such an extraordinary strength and depth of industry presence and needs that we want to make sure that we support that workforce pipeline that can provide that, which is why we continue to sort of make the case that being the only four-year institution in the USG providing this program means that we need to think of it not just simply in terms of Middle Georgia, but the state as a whole. And it is clear through the reviews, the analyses, the conversations with economic development that we have the expertise and there is the market to be able to align Middle Georgia and Greater Atlanta in some capacity. The question is how and when and where. And obviously that's come up to light more recently in the pooling idea.
Okay. And I guess one of the questions I've asked, and I know we've all had some conversation, the question I think this committee would like to discuss. Obviously, there's ways that we partnership. We partner with technical colleges and the USG. Obviously, there's things that you offer that TSG doesn't offer. For instance, I think the flight school. I mean, pilots. I may, if I'm speaking out of turn with maybe TSG does have one, I don't know, but I know, certainly you do. So I guess what I'd be looking at, maybe we have some further discussion is areas where we can partner. Obviously, as we talk about, again, aerospace, aviation from that perspective, the cost of these programs are expensive. Planes are expensive, engines are expensive, all of it's expensive. So we just can't have everything everywhere. I mean, it's, everybody wants their own school and their own flight school and all. You can't do that. So let's look at strategic ways that we can complement each other. Now, I also have asked the question, and I think this is where we go, and I think we're looking at education. If we partnered again with certainly the college and career academies, I think there's some things that are going on there trying to support FAA grants with our college career academies that get our students, these younger high school students involved as we carry them up. And I guess I think of it as a 3-story, 4-story floor high school, maybe, degree, technical sort of certifications, 2-year, 4-year degrees. And as you go up, you can go up the elevator, right? And you can get off and you can go as high as you want, to the top. But I want to also make sure that we're looking at the program. So, how does that student that maybe went through TSG and reached the peak of what that student could do at the technical college system, what are they doing? What's their next step to get in and maybe go to a 4-year degree? So where are our synergies there? Where are the programs lining up? And again, I'm going to say something, and I know, Dr. Perrin's on too. Are we having all classes and curriculum aren't created the same? So I want to make sure we've got that synergy, and especially as I think it could be there with the FAA certifications, because you got to meet the certification process. Right. But how do we make sure that we're aligned and that we're offering all of it, and that student that may be at Rome or maybe Paulding County in the future, wherever it is, say, hey, I want to go and do a 4-year degree and I can go to Middle Georgia. So I want to make sure that we've got the standard that will take that student all the way as high as they want to go within this part. And again, I keep going back to maintenance and that part of it. I'm not talking about, tech, engineering degrees, so to speak. I'm right. So those are some things, some conversations I want the committee to think about, and we're probably going to come back and address with TSG, USG there. And what are other questions that we were talking about? Industry partners, obviously TSG is partnered with. They've got in-kind contributions. If we, I know, I'm sure you're doing the same.
Yeah, we've received grants from Gulfstream so far, I think 6 or 7 years in a row. Dr. Blake talked about the philanthropic donation for the Macon facility. I think in the last 5 years, we've received about $1.25 million of donations or in-kind donations to the School of Aviation to support our mission. And just to your point, Mr. Chairman, on the how TCSG students can progress into a 4-year degree. I've reached out to my colleagues at TCSG. I know them very well at all the schools, at Georgia Northwestern, John Bird up there, Talos over at Savannah, and Central Georgia Tech, obviously, and Victoria at South Georgia. I think she's still there. We have a Bachelor of Applied Science where those students can complete their either certificate or associates at the technical college system, and then they can come to us and do our Bachelor of Applied Science That's fully online. They don't have to relocate to us, so they can go to work, they can be in the industry, and they can continue. So when they go to work in the industry, that A&P license is the most important thing to the industry as a brand new employee. But what industry wants and what industry needs, and Lance Tollen alluded to this, is those students that can think critically, they can write well, they can communicate well. So they need to be able to grow their own through management. And that's what that, and at Middle Georgia State University, so they can go from the technical college to us, get their bachelor's. They can also get a master's degree. Now it's a master's of science and management with an aviation management track. So they can go all the way up, and that grooms them for those management positions within Gulfstream, within Delta Airlines, and any other aviation industry, airport management, those type of things. So it's.
Okay. Chairman Jokers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to follow up what you just said, several years ago, if the technical college system became SACS accredited, so their courses transfer over to USG. And so it should be streamlined, fluid, with no problems for them to transition from an associate's degree at a technical college or a certificate degree at a technical college to come to Middle Georgia School of Aviation and progress on up the ladder. Is there, and you said that you've worked with your counterparts with the technical college system, and is there any type of advisor program? Well, the student gets advice, well, you got potential to go to a career thing. Why don't you think about, after you get this, going to Middle Georgia? I was curious about that.
I'm not sure what they do within the schools, the technical colleges, if they give that information out. Prior to COVID, we were getting ready to work on signing an articulation agreement with TCSG, with those schools that have those programs with us for the Bachelor of Applied Science. Obviously COVID hit, and matter of fact, I just talked to Tal at Savannah Tech and John Bird this week about getting together and trying to get those articulation agreements signed. But it's a great opportunity. All of the schools, Dr. Perrin mentioned, all the maintenance schools fall under that FAA curriculum. And with the technical colleges being SACS accredited, they can transfer seamlessly over to our programs. So it's not an issue. Our maintenance program doesn't line up perfectly with the technical college system, because when we left the technical college system, we had a little more flexibility, because they just have and I'm not sure if it's still that way, but when we were part of the technical college system, we all had to have the same state curriculum. And when we left the technical college system, our advisory committee wanted us to have more training for electrical troubleshooting and avionics installation and that type of stuff. And they wanted more composite training and stuff. So when we left that system, we tweaked our curriculum a little bit. We added more time into our electrical troubleshooting program, into our sheet metal program, into our turbines classes and those type of things. But it's something that we articulate constantly between schools. So the program chair of that maintenance program will sit down, and he just goes course by course, and it's just based on learning outcomes. And as long as they meet those learning outcomes, we're able to articulate that credit over.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
As we look at this, one question I have is, this is what confuses me. We've got certificates, we've got diplomas and degrees. So, and again, Dr. Perrin, you'd mentioned this going through, you can take, parts of, or you get through a part and you get a certificate, but it may not be the whole. So how do we, from a maintenance sort of that perspective, how do we compare apples and oranges of that? Because I know you said you had some programs, Dr. Perrin, that we're dealing with maybe upholstery, Gulfstream, right? So it was very specific. Or there's avionics that maybe there's some specific programs or certificates for avionics. So how does that compare to you? I'm hearing that you may have it all in one big program versus somebody just getting parts of, or how do I compare apples and oranges, so to speak? Or how does the committee do that so we understand the whole process?
So we do an avionics install course. We don't, it's not part of a certificate like TCSG has those TCCs, technical certificate credits. It's not part of that. It's a 1 semester, 8 hour a day, 5 day a week intensive avionics install course. And that actually came as a result of our advisory committee, Gulfstream and Delta Airlines and Robins Air Force Base. They didn't need a full-blown avionics program where they test boxes and stuff like that. Because quite honestly, the only people that work on their own boxes now are the military. Everybody else pulls a box out, they send it back. You just need to be able to troubleshoot to determine what that malfunction is, if it's a box. So what we focus on is the install and the troubleshooting in our avionics electrical install course. Same thing on the, I think Ms. Hudnall's slide had aircraft assembly. We don't have a certificate in aircraft assembly, but we cover aircraft assembly within our aircraft structural technology program, our sheet metal and composite program, which is similar to what TCSG has. But we go through aircraft assembly in there, and that was a direct result of Gulfstream. They came down a few years ago and they want to know if we teach them how to assemble the components that we teach them how to manufacture. And at that time, we did not, but we do now. So it's integrated within our aircraft structural technology program. We don't have an upholstery program or an interior program like Savannah Tech does, but quite honestly, that's more of a local, it's kind of like at South Georgia Tech. South Georgia Tech has to spend a little more time teaching wood, dope, and fabric work because they have industry there that needs that skill set.
The ag
industry. So Thrush needs that skill set, but Delta Airlines doesn't need that skill set. Gulfstream doesn't need that skill set, but at Savannah Tech, Gulfstream needs that skill set for interior work, upholstery, and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I think we've started a conversation here, and I want to continue this. I think I'm going to circle back with committee and our budget analysts and let's get some of the questions and let's figure out where do we go from here. And how do we get resources aligned with the right curriculum, the right courses, around the state, and also let's marry up our needs of the industry so that we can start producing this. Because again, as I look at the numbers, I don't think if you marry the Middle Georgia, USG part of what I'm looking at with the TSG students, I don't think we're anywhere close to meeting the future need of the workforce. And I will say this, 2 and 3 years from now, as this comes back up and all of a sudden we're seeing the results of how many 16,000, of these technicians that are keeping these aircraft in the air right now, as we see, the increase in flight and demand on the aircraft, and all of a sudden here comes to fruition this large gap in early retirement of these folks. I don't think we're going to be able to produce this. I don't think we're even anywhere close to Georgia and its higher, the institutions of higher education coming close to putting out what is needed in the industry, and that's where my focus is. So a long meeting, and I sincerely appreciate the people who have been here. This is an honest policy discussion as we go forward about what we need to do, and hopefully it's enlightened everyone as to how big the sector is and what it means. And we'll get more detailed. We'll get more detailed around the geographic areas in the state, some of our major employers, and try to maybe get into a little more detail of what those needs are, so we can further refine maybe a path forward and where we go. So with that, to Commissioner Dr. Perrin, President Blake, Aiden, thank y'all for being here, and just count on more questions and further discussion as we go forward. Anything else from the committee? Anything else from the audience that's here? Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for hanging in for a pretty long meeting, and there's more work to be done.
Thank you, Mr.
Meeting is
Chairman.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.